What up, guys? I got one person watching. Hello, hello. Welcome to United. This is the best part of the video. I got a hair in my mouth. Off to a great start. Hey, Tina. Kind of sad that it is not as beautiful and sunny today as it was this week, because we had beautiful weather this week. Got the hair. Got it. All right, we're going to wait a couple minutes for people to sign on. It's 4 o'clock, so hopefully people will start signing on soon. We shall see. Got nothing. Our house is going through like phases of like really clean and then disaster. So right now we're kind of in the disaster phase again. So I bleached shirts last night, so that was pretty fun. Here. Quarantine life. There's not a whole lot to update you guys on. Okay, we'll wait like 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. And then for those who aren't here, can just watch it later, so it'll be fine. I wonder if people actually like watch this beginning part. I don't know. Or they like skip it forward. I would probably skip it forward because it's just awkward. So we got to go to the chiropractor this morning. That was pretty exciting. Love me some chiropractor. Okay, we'll just get started. Okay, question of the day is, what do you miss most about life, I guess? So since quarantine, what do you guys miss? What do you want to hear about it? I miss you guys. Like, I miss just being able to pick you guys up and hang out and go to coffee and just do whatever. I miss our students. I miss the beaches. Yeah. Miss church. That's a big one. Miss church. Yeah. I miss him too, Teresa. Teresa misses the youth students. Yeah. All right. What else do you guys miss? Cool. Good answers. All right. We'll just get started. And yeah, we'll just get to it. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is one of my favorite topics. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily one of my favorite topics or if it's just a topic that I get to talk about a lot because I do counseling at the school. And so the topic is emotions. And so we're going to talk about emotions and dealing with those emotions in a healthy and godlike way. It's super ironic that I'm a counselor because I actually like hate talking about how I feel. Always have, and I'm not very good at it, but it's something that I'm working on. It's something that's good for you. And so it's just funny to me that that's now my job, that my job is to make people tell me how they're feeling. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. And so what we're going to be basing it off of today is the book of Matthew, and then also off of a podcast, which I highly recommend. It's a super good podcast. It is called, I Cry in Corners. And it's by this woman in ministry. Her name's Jody. And she is just super real. She's funny. She's awkward. And so I really like listening to her. So you guys have the time, and I would recommend listening to her podcast and starting from like the very beginning, because it explains like her heart and the reason that she started the podcast in the first place. And this is actually the one that I'm basing this off of, is off of her like very first podcast. That shows how good it is, because it just stuck with me and I wanted to share it with you. So, and it also was fitting because it is about the night that Jesus was betrayed. And so today is Good Friday. So happy Good Friday. And that is the day that we celebrate, I guess, the night that Jesus was betrayed and that Jesus was crucified, because on Easter, on Sunday, he rose from the grave and all that good stuff. And so today is about Good Friday and how Jesus handled his emotions on a very, very, very emotional night. And when you think about it, like, I can't even imagine the emotions that Jesus was feeling on that night. I mean, like, one of his own disciples betrayed him. So Judas betrayed him. He had conversations with Peter, telling Peter, like, dude, I know that you're going to deny me. Peter's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And Jesus, like, knows, like, okay, yeah, you're going to deny me 3 times. And so I think too often we read through like these stories and we read the Bible and we forget about all the human emotion that goes behind it and goes behind the words and the exchanges that people make and the conversations. But like, people are very emotional, and people were very emotional back in biblical times too. And so it's just a good reminder to like think that those people were emotional. Like, Jesus was emotional as he was talking to Peter. He was emotional as he was thinking about Judas betraying him. And then also just like super emotional about thinking what was to come with the being on the cross and the pain, like the physical pain and the emotional pain. And just like that heaviness that I'm sure weighed on him that night. And there's so much that we can learn of how Jesus handled his emotions that night. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let me open my phone Bible. And we're going to be in Matthew 26, verse 36 through verse 46. And it says, "Then Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and he said, 'Sit here while I go over there to pray.' He took Peter and Zebedee's 2 sons, James and John, and he became anguished and was distressed. He told them, 'My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.'" So obviously, like, Jesus is like super, like, just emotional. Like, he is anguished. He is like grieving to the point of death. Like, his whole soul is just like, ugh, I can't imagine. And he went on a little farther and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then he returned to his disciples and found them asleep. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Then Jesus left them a second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So he prayed a third time, saying the same things again. Then he came to the disciples and said, "Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up, let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here." And when you look at the same story in the book of Luke, it actually says that Jesus was to the point where he was crying blood. He was so anguished. He was grieving so much. And so that's just like, that's the physical of what we can see on the outside of how heavy his emotions were that night. And so the first point that I want to make is that when Jesus was overwhelmed with the night and with the emotions and with everything that was going to come, that was okay. It was okay for Jesus to be overwhelmed. It was okay for Jesus to be experiencing all of those emotions. But it wasn't okay for Jesus to just stay in that point, just like us. It's okay for us to experience these big emotions. It might be disappointment, it might be sadness, it could be grieving, but we can't stay there. And Jesus gives us a really good example of what to do next. So Jesus took those really deep emotions and he took them to God. He took a step away from people, which shows us like it's okay. Like if you need a break, like step away from people and go deal with those emotions and deal with them with God. And so in just this short time period, Jesus steps away 3 times to go pray with his Father. So 3 times Jesus is going and sharing those really deep emotions with God, and just learning to like give those emotions over to God. And it says that he did this 3 times. And so like it's not like Jesus gave the emotions over and they were gone. Like it was something that he had to continually go and give these emotions to God. And I think that's something that we can learn from as well. Because when we have that deep sorrow, when we have those deep emotions, like they don't go away instantly. And we have to like continually give them to God, like continue to work on them with God. And God's going to be that first source and that best source of how those emotions can be dealt with and how those emotions can heal. And so Jesus didn't let his strong emotions affect his relationship with God. Instead, he took those emotions to God. The next point that I want to make is that Jesus didn't allow his emotions to affect his relationship with his friends or his disciples. So the people that were with him, the people that he took to the garden with him. There was 3 times that Jesus went and prayed and asked his disciples, hey, stay awake for me, keep watch, be praying with me. And 3 times he came back and they were sleeping. And so I think like our natural, at least like my natural instinct is to become really frustrated, and maybe like people get snappy, people just get super disappointed, they get frustrated, they lash out, maybe people yell, or they just like overthink it, like it gets in their head and you just like become bitter because you're thinking it so much. And so Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus doesn't get bitter. He doesn't freak out on his friends like I think a lot of us would. He's disappointed, like he's disappointed in his friends, but he doesn't allow his emotions to take over. He asks them again and again to stay awake with him, but he doesn't freak out. He doesn't allow his disappointment in his friends to affect how he treats his friends. And I think oftentimes like working in the school and then also just Sam and I being pastors, like there's situations that we have to mediate sometimes between friends. And when friends say like hurtful things and lash out at each other, and then it just becomes a cycle where friends are just saying hurtful to his friends, yet he didn't lash out at his friends. And so I think that's something that we can really learn from and be challenged by, because that's not easy. It is not easy to be patient with friends and family sometimes. But it's not okay to hurt people in the process of us not navigating our emotions well. The last point that I want to make is that Jesus didn't allow his emotions to how he treated his enemies. And I use the word enemies because I think that's how our natural, like human worldly perspective is. But Jesus didn't have enemies. He viewed people as loved, and that's kind of the point that we're going to make with the people that betrayed Jesus and the people that turned their back on Jesus, because Jesus didn't even allow his emotions to take over when people were betraying him. So when you read on, you get to the point where Judas actually comes and kisses Jesus and betrays him. And when Jesus is greeted by Judas, Jesus actually calls Judas his friend. And he says, let me find it. He says, "My friend, go ahead and do what you have come for." And so we actually know that the word friend, in this case, it means comrade, which is like a brother in arms. And this is the part in the podcast where my mind was just like blown, because even in the midst of Jesus being betrayed, he was still declaring Judas's calling and his purpose and his identity over Judas. He didn't allow the situation, he didn't allow his emotions to affect how he viewed Judas. He didn't allow it to affect Judas's identity, which is where we can learn a lot. Unfortunately, like, we are going to face betrayal. We are going to face hurt in our lives, and it's going to come from friends. It's going to come from family. It's going to come from, I don't know, people who just seem really mean-spirited. People are going to betray us. And it's so important in those times that our emotions and our behaviors don't take control. And I think it's a really good reminder to think that our emotions don't give us permission to lash out and claim anything different than the identity that Christ has given them. So just because we're hurt doesn't change how God views them. And so in that same way, like, our goal and our striving is to view people the same way that God views them, even in the midst of hurt, even in the midst of betrayal. So our emotions don't give us permission to change how we view people, because we need to be viewing them through God's eyes. And so the big idea in all of this is that our emotions are not our compass. Jesus is our compass. And so Jesus is our guide and our navigator in how we are interacting with people, how we're treating people, how we're dealing with betrayal, how we're dealing with disappointment, how we're dealing with grieving and feeling overwhelmed. Like, all those feelings don't get to be our compass. Like, oh, I'm frustrated, so that means I get to lash out. Or, oh, they betrayed me, that means that I get to betray them. That's not our compass. We know that the Bible is our compass. We know that Christ's love is our compass. And so that is our guide. So on Instagram today, I read a post, and it said that Jesus didn't die so that we could keep treating people the way that he was treated. And I think that's such a good reminder, because, like, Jesus died because he loved us. Jesus died so we could have freedom and hope and a peace. And it's not up to us that we don't get to live that same life or take that away from people. Like, that is our goal, is to share that same hope and peace and love with other people. And just like Pastor Andy says all the time, Christ died for all people. And that means the people that have betrayed us, that have hurt us. And so Jesus died so that we could live, and that we could live well, and that we could live with our emotions, which are a positive thing, and live with live with the good, the bad, the ugly, but do it in a Christ-like way. So with all that being said, let's pray, guys, and then we'll close out. God, I just thank you that you have created us to be emotional people. You've created us to have strong emotions, and that you've also given us direction on how to deal with all of that emotion. And I just thank you, God, that as we are here on Good Friday, on the day that you gave your life for us, God, that we would not take that for granted, that we would not ignore or forget why we're celebrating what we're celebrating. God, that you are a good God that came down to our level to just be an example to us and to show us what it truly means to love people and to love people well. I just thank you for the sacrifice that you made, and that you are a good, good Father. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, we love you. We miss you. God bless. Happy Easter. All right. See ya.